the math is real, and that does speak for itself. Now, it's not every single Ferrari model. Like, you have to know the market, you have to do your research, you have to maybe have a little experience with it. So yeah, I mean, it's not. These are investments. These are assets that are appreciating in value, or at least not losing money. So even if I sold it in 2 years for the same thing that I bought it for, it's still cheaper than buying a Toyota.
You're listening to The Growth Booth, the show focused on achieving lifestyle freedom through online businesses. Whether you're looking for step-by-step strategies to start building an online business, simple game plans to grow your business, or proven lifestyle freedom frameworks, you are in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the thousands of listeners already in growth mode. Hey, Aidan Booth here. Welcome to episode number 50 of The Growth Booth. And I'm super excited today because we're going to talk about how you can get paid to own a Ferrari and other supercars. And I've got no one better to talk about that topic than my business partner, Steve Clayton. Steve, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to be here again.
Now, it's a super exciting time of the year as well because we are running what is, I think, our 11th annual 12-day giveaway. And if you don't know what that is, then I'm going to tell you right now, you need to head over to the12daygiveaway.com because we're going to be giving away $1,000 per day for 12 days, or I should say prizes that are worth around about that amount of money, as well as lots of cool things. And you're going to be able to see how you can come along on a journey with us as well, which, by the way, there's a really nice Ferrari in that journey, and you're going to see how all that ties up. So anyway, Ferraris, super yachts, planes. Steve, you are a lover of the finer things in life, and I feel privileged to be your business partner because I get to play around in all these things without actually having to buy them. So you know, now like Ferraris, how do you own a? Actually, let me just start back up here. We're going to talk about Ferraris and owning $500,000 sports cars and making money with them. We're going to talk about the experience of owning a super yacht and either making or maybe losing money there, and planes, hair raising, flying experiences, not finding runways, emergency levers, lifestyle freedom as well. But I want to start with the plane. So what was it that made you want to own a plane? Maybe you can tell a little bit of that story.
Yeah, you know, I kind of feel like I have a much better perspective on what drove me to do that now than perhaps I even did when I first got into it. Just, you know, sort of by virtue of experience and knowing yourself and that sort of thing. So, I mean, flying has always been something that has fascinated me. I mean, I've always been super interested in, you know, I guess even when I was a teenager and saw Top Gun and, you know, everybody's favorite flying movie, you know. So I was really, really into flying. But as it turns out, the other thing that I'm really, really into is like systems and procedures. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, like my father always makes fun of me. He's like, you know, that is the ultimate, I think the old expression was like a busman's holiday where, you know, you go out and it's like to relax, you consume a whole manual of an airplane and air traffic control guidance and procedures and reading charts. And he's like, how is that relaxing? And I'm like, yeah,
sounds like it makes you go to sounds like it makes you go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I know it's crazy, but it's like a thing with me. Like I love to dive into something and master it, you know, and that's just something that I don't know. Like, you know, I can't. That's how I can relax, you know. So I think all those things drove me to flying. But the other thing was also this incredible, you know, we talk so much about freedom and the ability to get in your own airplane and just jump in and then, you know, land and get out and you're somewhere completely different. I mean, I know it's the same thing you could do with a car, right? But the distances and the types of freedom that you have are just so much different. Like I remember we would do a lot of, I always wanted to do a lot of training with my instructor. You know, it was really important to me. I'm really all about safety and all that sort of stuff. So we would be looking for things to do, you know, and we would wake up and we'd get in the airplane in North Carolina and we would go to New Orleans for lunch, and we'd go to Memphis, New Orleans, and we'd have, you know, some of the New Orleans dishes, and then we would go to Memphis and have barbecue for dinner, you know, and then we'd just come back, you know. So you can do this. It just had this incredible amount of freedom to it. The other thing I remember, which was perhaps the single most amazing experience of my flying career, I was flying by myself from North Carolina to Key West. And that was a route I did very often because we had the kids in North Carolina. We had our boat in Key West. And anyway, I was by myself. And it was like at night. It was 11 o'clock at night or something. And so it was obviously dark, but it was a full moon. And I remember I came up upon the clouds, up above a cloud barrier, and I saw the moon. And I was sitting there by myself, maybe 30 minutes out over the ocean, heading to Key West. And I'm just floating in the air like some kind of astronaut. And I was like, this is the most amazing sense of freedom I have ever had in my life. So I didn't even know that that's what I was chasing, when I was going after it. But I don't know, I'm sure that's way more than you wanted to know. But, that's kind of, those are the things that really drove me to want to learn how to fly.
And talking about that freedom, it wasn't just like domestic freedom either. I mean,
No.
I traveled with you on a couple of occasions internationally in your plane.
Yep.
And tell us a story about not being able to find the runway, because as a passenger, that was kind of unnerving when Steve was like supposedly.
Well, first of all, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I just want to be very clear about this. So what happened was we were doing some filming, and we were going to go to this place that I know very well in the Bahamas that you can really only reach through private plane or private boat. And however, the problem was that the runway that we would normally use, and calling it a runway is being very generous, was closed for an extended period of time. So we knew before we left that we had to go to another island over. And this runway was even less of a runway, right? However, it was in our navigation systems. So, it's a real runway. So we navigated to the Bahamas and we flew right to where the runway ought to be. And as we got down to look for said runway, it was not there. So as it turns out, they had moved the runway to some other island. It was like next door, but you can't see it.
I don't think it ever existed I don't think it ever existed where they said it was, because I remember looking out the window. I mean, there's not much down there, just like a bit of scrub, a little bit of bush, and we're definitely not going to land on that.
No. And the runway itself is like this big, So, in fact, I knew it was going to be the shortest runway I'd ever landed on, and so I had actually practiced on other runways in the United States that were short, and then just said, okay, well, I'm only going to use, half of it or whatever. And so I had done that like a whole bunch of times because I wanted to make sure I didn't kill everybody.
That reminds me of, for the people that have seen Top Gun and even the most recent Top Gun, like they have to train themselves to do things that you wouldn't normally need to do, like get down the valley in a certain number of seconds or something, and then go up and go down. And this was like Steve navigating into this teeny tiny runway. Not only it wasn't very long, but it wasn't very wide either. So it was you gotta nail this, otherwise we're going to be in the grass. Or worse. So
we get there. We get there and it's clear the runway's not there. And so Aidan and I were flying, and I think we had somebody else with us. And so everybody's like, well, okay, well, what are we going to do? And I was like, yeah, I'm not sure, So, but then luckily we saw another airplane. I kid you not, and which you don't often see. I mean, like when you don't love seeing other people around you. You tend to. The whole idea is to maintain a lot of separation. Anyway, we saw this guy. I was able to reach him on the radio, and I was like, "Hey, I'm just calling for directions. do you happen to know where this runway is?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's right over here. Follow me." So I just ended up. It was the most bizarre flying I've ever done. Because normally when I fly, and again, I'm back to the whole procedures thing. I'm a stickler. Like I know exactly when we're going to leave. I know how much fuel we have. I know how much we weigh. I know what the winds are doing. I know exactly how long it's going to take us. I know, where the procedure that I'm going to follow to get down and land. Here, it was like, just follow me. I'm going to go. So it was not
no air traffic control or that
no air traffic control. No, nobody wanted to hear from me at all. So that was kind of an adventure. And there have been a few of those things, but that was a fun.
And before, I know we want to get into the super yacht, and everyone wants to know how the hell you make money on owning supercars. But how long does it take to get a pilot's license to the point where you're able to fly for yourself, or is it like a number of hours that you have to do? It's a combination of things.
I mean, so there's a bunch of different ways to answer that question. There is a minimum number of hours that you need to do in order to be eligible to take the driving test, with an FAA examiner. But most people need more than the minimum hours. And to be honest, it's been so many years, I forget what the minimum hours is. I think it's like 40 or something for a private pilot. So I probably, and then this would be a good time to say that I think that there are two kinds of pilots. There are pilots who are naturals. I call them stick and rudder guys. They can get in an airplane. They can fly any air. Tom Cruise is for those of you who don't know, is an actual pilot. And the guy is an absolute natural. He flies helicopters. He flies a million different kinds of airplanes, and it comes easy to him. And there's several, there's a percentage of pilots that are like that. And then there are the other guys, which I fall into. I'm not a stick and rudder guy. It doesn't come natural to me. And so you have to really, work at it a lot to maintain that and build up and maintain that muscle memory of flying. It's doesn't. So that's why I'm saying anybody can do it. But there are some people that can do it a lot easier. So if you're a stick and rudder guy, you could do it in 40 hours and you could take the test. But then the other reason it's not so simple to answer that question is that only gives you what's called a private pilot's, everybody calls it the license. It's a certificate, but it's private pilot's license, which isn't really enough. Pilots call it a license to learn at that point. So then you can fly others within certain rules and regulations, but you can only fly what's called VFR. You can only fly visually when you can see what's in front of you. You're not going to fly you're not going to fly in bad weather. You're not going to be talking to air traffic control. You're not in the system. You're going to be going up and, burning holes in the sky close to an airport. You could do some cross countries, but it's visual flight. So then you have to fly for about another year or so, and then you can go and train to get your instrument certificate. So, which I did, all those things, because you really need that in order to fly internationally, in order to fly in any kind of weather. And we started to use the airplane a lot for commuting back and forth to Key West. So, we really needed that. I mean, I needed to fly in rain and clouds and, that sort of thing. So again, way more than anybody wanted to know, but it's just a hard question to answer because it
gives us a bit more context anyway into that process for those of you that are wondering. Now, let's move on to the super yacht. Another interesting toy that not that many people end up getting, but you got one, and it wasn't your first. It wasn't your first yacht. I went down and stayed on a smaller one, but still amazing that you had. Before that, was there always an attraction to having a vessel on the water, kind of a thing? What's the backstory? Yeah,
I mean, for me, I grew up with my dad. Always had boats. Nothing as big as I had, but we always had, small boat to do something or other, fishing in the ocean or whatever. So I was always pretty enamored with it. Loved the ocean. But again, it also comes back to the whole systems thing. It's, I love these are floating houses, and so with the bigger ones. And, they have their own HVAC systems. They have their own generators to create electricity, their own water treatments. You not only just treating the regular water, but making regular water out of seawater. They have systems to keep the boat from rocking. There's just a million different things. And then there is, again, being a captain of a boat, a certain size boat, is very analogous to being a pilot. I think it's a little less complicated, having done both, but it's still pretty complicated. And, being able to read charts and navigate and all the computer systems for, so it really, it is right in my wheelhouse, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of synergies between pilots and captains.
Tell us briefly about, I've told, we've sort of mentioned one of the little hair-raising stories about not finding a runway. Now, we've got another partner who works with us a lot, Tim, and apparently you almost killed Tim out on the boat, which I think you were also heading to the Bahamas. It's like you're in the bloody Bermuda Triangle or something.
We were. Yeah, we were in the Bermuda Triangle actually, but which was scary. We were heading from I can't remember, maybe Abaco. We were heading from Abaco to Atlantis in Nassau, Paradise Island. So it's a pretty decent trip. It's an I forget how, maybe 6-8 hour trip kind of thing, and you do get some open ocean.
And to be clear, you're on your middle-sized yacht at this point. It wasn't the the biggest.
This was a 52-foot boat that I captained by myself for about 10 years, and great boat. And it's the size that everybody is within everyone's grasp. I mean, obviously, if you're, you know what I'm trying to say. It's not $1 million. Boat I mean, if you bought one new, yeah, but you can buy plenty of used 52-foot cruising boats that can do these kinds of trips for in a couple $100,000. So it's equivalent to sort of like having a vacation home kind of thing. So well within people's eventual grasp, not crazy. And I had that for 10 years, and so yeah, we were in that boat, very capable boat. But as we were navigating there, a beautiful sunny day all of a sudden turned into an absolute nightmare with squalls. And as if that wasn't enough, we actually had several water spouts, which are essentially tornadoes on the water. And Tim, who has no boating experience and was not a happy camper, was very, very unhappy. And I mean, I don't have any water spout experiences. I have a rough weather experience, but not. And so Tim was like, all right, well, we just, we need to avoid those. And I'm like, well, yes, we do. However, I don't know where they're going. They're all over the place. Like, I can't avoid something that doesn't have a track, So anyway, yeah, we made it through there, but it did rip. It actually ripped off the hydraulic lines of our radar mast and everything. It did some damage to the boat.
I'm glad I wasn't on that one with you, although I'm sure you guys must have had a celebratory drink upon arrival.
Oh, we did.
We made it.
We sure did. And Tim was like, yeah, I'm not going back on it.
Is that when you decided that you needed to get a bigger boat because something?
No. It was, we were safe. I mean, that was a great boat. I did again, this is like the whole freedom thing. A couple of times I took our young kids and even one of their friends once, and we went all throughout the Bahamas for 30 days at a time in this boat. And it is, in my opinion, it's kind of like that sweet spot for the owner operator. And honestly, now they're even easier because now they have joystick control. Because the hardest thing about, once you're out in the middle of the ocean, there are challenges, obviously, with weather and things like that and navigation. But you don't have any docking problems. Where most people have problems is docking. It's like, oh, there's wind, there's current. I got other boats. It's a scary thing. I mean, it took me a long time to feel comfortable doing it. But now they have these joysticks, which basically it annoys all of us captains because it lets anybody do it, without any kind of experience or practice. You don't have to worry about asymmetrical thrust and, changing two engines and dealing with all sorts of other things. Anyway, so people should feel comfortable if they have a dream like this, thinking about it, because it's very attainable. These boats are very, fairly easy to manage in that size range, and they're now even easier to dock. And while that was new technology 15 years ago, now these boats are available on the used market at very reasonable prices. So
right, sounds like the transition from manual shift
yes.
in a car, manually changing gears, to all of a sudden just having the car magically do it in an automatic, and then. A lot of people are learning to drive nowadays and they don't know how to drive manual. So
I think it's really analogous to that. Yeah, definitely.
So then you upgraded to the Super Yacht, which was a real amazing boat, and I was fortunate to go on it at least a couple of times. I mean, to paint a picture here, this is something that had, correct me if I'm wrong, but had like 3 or 4 bedrooms. At least a couple of these were bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms and double beds in them, like big ship. And you don't realize how big it is until you're on it, because there's like a level below deck. There's a level which I guess is like at deck level, and then you've got the top level, and I mean it's absolutely amazing. It's like it really is like a floating house at that point, and even bigger than a house sometimes. So, what was the deal there? I mean, I know that we went out on a super yacht one time, and so I know a little bit about the deal, but you can fill in the gaps. We went out on a super yacht. Steve was like, "Oh, this is nice." Steve disappears for half an hour, comes back, and he's made a spreadsheet about buying a super yacht. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Well, there we go. And then, sure enough, as tends to happen, what Steve starts imagining, he ends up having, and he got the super yacht. So was that always something that you had in mind, or was it something that you just sort of thought about one day and realised that it was doable?
I think because it was something I always wanted to do. And I really wanted to experience there's a tipping point from the 50-foot boat that I captained myself for 10 years to, maybe it's at around 80 or so feet, maybe 90. This boat that I had was, just shy of 100 feet, and it had 3 guest cabins, all of which could have 2 or 3 or 4 people, depending on how you wanted it. And they all had en-suites. And then it had crew quarters as well. Because we always had, when we ran, we always had 4 crew. So, this is, like anywhere between 8 to 10 people are living on this yacht. And so it's some of the same things as the 50. In fact, I mean, I could maneuver the boat. I could drive the boat. And in some ways, it's actually easier because it's much bigger and much heavier, and so you're not pushed around, as much by current and stuff. In other ways, it's harder. I didn't drive it a lot, so but I wanted to experience that tipping point where all of a sudden the systems are way more complex. So, like for example, instead of small individual air conditioning units, there was a central chilling unit, or several of them, which would chill, much like a high rise, where it would chill water and then route water, through air handlers among the boat. And so, I guess I have a little bit of an engineering kind of person in me. My dad's an engineer, mechanical engineer. I love that shit. I just love getting involved in all that and learning it. And, so it had amazing systems on it, converting water into seawater into drinkable water and all that sort of stuff, all the different hot water heaters and how that all worked. So you kind of got this, it's a almost mini little, apartment complex, really. Bigger than just a single house, And so, there was so much to it. And so I always wanted to experience that. I always wanted to experience more the business side of yachting and chartering and having a crew. I loved the idea of having a chef and somebody who could freaking wash my boat, so I wouldn't have to wash the boat, and I could just show up or meet me in, we did that a few times. The one I captained myself, I always had to move to where I wanted it to go. This boat, I could show up in the Virgin Islands, which we did at least once, and it was there, So, yeah, I mean, stuff like that. It's something I had always wanted to do.
I think a lot of people could imagine the appeal of having one of these things. I mean, if you've ever been down to a dock in a major city or a port or something, or you've just seen them on TV, I mean, they are absolutely mind-blowing and definitely look like they are a toy of the rich and the famous. But what was it that you didn't like about having a super yacht? I mean, what's the other side of the coin there?
Well, I tell you, the fast forward, I had that boat for 4 years or so, maybe 5 years, and ran a charter business and stuff, and among other things. And I sold it. I guess a year. The time goes so by quickly. I guess it's 2 years now, and I probably will never have another boat. It's over for me. But which is not to say it's horrible. It's just that I got it out of my system, And the thing that really that I didn't like is the people aspect. For those of you guys who've watched like Below Deck and have seen kind of the interpersonal issues with the crew, finding crew, interviewing them, that sucked. I mean, it was really bad. It was really hard to find qualified people who would stick around. And that was really tough. So I didn't like that. It was horrible. And I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So
when it gets to the point where it's causing you stress and you're waking up in the morning
yes.
or in the night and you're solving problems, it's no longer the dream that you sort of had. But you had a good run there, and I know that
we did.
It is great to be able to be in a position where anytime you want to, you can always go back and sort of have the best of both worlds by chartering one of these things for a couple of weeks, and you've still
which I probably will do.
Yeah,
I mean, we've talked about it, but on the other hand, I may not do anytime real soon because I just feel like I kind of like got it out of my system, and now I want to do other things, and like I mean, I've been a boater for a really long time, and so I think.
I think we should do it. I think we should do it. I'm gonna work on convincing.
We would do it. Yeah, as like a guy's business trip kind of thing. I'm totally on board. That's not an issue. I just mean like with family and stuff. I probably
right. Get that. Yeah. And also something we haven't spoken about, but if you're listening to this and you want to own a super yacht, there's actually some pretty interesting tax. There's an interesting tax side to it, and if you do a Google search for tax benefits of owning a super yacht, you might be able to find some pretty interesting things which might make it much more viable than you would otherwise think. I know there's some really, really interesting things there and lots published about it. But everyone wants to know, how do you own a Ferrari and make you money or not like lose your money? Because I've got a Nissan, and my Nissan is not worth a lot of money, so there's not really much that it can sort of go down in value. But you've got a car, and have had lots of cars which have been worth $500,000 or more, and they actually make you money. So what's the deal there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have to look at a few things. One is you have to look at total cost of ownership of anything, right? And so if you look at like a traditional Toyota, this is pre-COVID, right? Before the used car market was crazy, which now it's starting to normalize, obviously. But pre-COVID, you buy a Toyota for what, $30,000, and you keep it for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, it's probably worth, pick a number, 20,000, 15,000, right? So you've lost that amount of money on that asset, plus all the operating expenses that you might have had, like tires and oil changes and anything that went wrong with the car. Hopefully it was fixed under warranty. But, so you buy a Toyota, and maybe at the end of the day, it ended up costing you, after 3 years of owning it, and now you divest of that asset, it may have cost you $15,000. So juxtapose that with Ferrari that I just bought about 8 months ago or so. So now that one I ordered new, and I waited 2 years for it. So long time. And I paid $400,000 for that car. Now, by paid, you can obviously pay with cash, or you can finance something like that, right? And in this example, right now, that car is being sold for $550,000 to $575,000. Now, when I go to get rid of it, now I tend to get rid of cars quickly because I get bored with cars and I switch cars and things like that, which actually works to my advantage here. So when I go to sell this car, which will probably be at the 2-year mark, since I already have the next one ordered, then maybe the car will be worth, I'm guessing the car will be worth maybe $500,000, maybe more, honestly. And so what I bought for $400,000, I will have held for 2 years. Ferrari includes all the maintenance, so I will have spent no money on maintenance. I probably won't spend any money on tires or anything. I'll have insurance and stuff like that. But look, at the end of the day, I'll make $100,000. So I'll sell it for $500,000. I bought it for $400,000, which is a hell of a lot better than the stock market, right? Even the stock market during COVID. So the reason that happens, right, is that the Ferraris obviously keep their value more than a Toyota in general, but Ferrari has always been a more limited car, so there's more demand than there is supply, and people don't like to wait. Whereas if you kind of get on the train where you have a car and you've already ordered the next one, the waiting is not so hard. Like, I mean, as I always say, like, I'm not, my next one is 2 years away also. But it's not a hardship because I have a Ferrari in the garage. So not a big deal, right? So if you look at and it sounds insane. And I finally have convinced my father, that I'm not an irresponsible person here. It's not like I'm going out and spending $400,000 on a car. I'm just not, because even if you financed it, let's say you financed it and your car payment was something ridiculous like $2,000 a month, right? Even if you do that, you're still making more than you would in the stock market. So it's not about, oh, well, if you have the cash, you can buy. No, it's not. So now, yes, obviously not someone who's homeless can't buy a Ferrari because they don't have the credit. They don't, so I'm not trying to say that. I'm not trying to be ridiculous here, but the math is real, and that does speak for itself. Now, it's not every single Ferrari model. Like, you have to know the market. You have to do your research. You have to maybe have a little experience with it. I mean, this is my, I've lost track, to be honest with you. I think I'm on my eighth Ferrari, maybe ninth, because I also have a Ferrari race car now, which I don't even know if I told you about. But, so yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's not, these are investments. These are assets that are appreciating in value, or at least not losing money. So even if I sold it in 2 years for the same thing that I bought it for, it's still cheaper than buying a Toyota.
Yeah. That's amazing.
No matter how,
it's amazing. And
I mean,
the first time you told me the story, I was like, holy crap! I really need to get me one of these. And so I've been working on this logic with my wife for a while now. I'm like, hey, honey, we're going to make some good money out of this thing, and I'm not going to be sitting in the traffic lights in a freaking Nissan. And so,
right.
But anyway, that's a work in progress, and that's a story for another day. One thing I will say,
it took me a long time.
Right. Well, now I'm sure your wife is completely in on the idea and probably wants you to buy more.
Yeah, so. She finally, she's just like, oh, fine, I give up. I give up. But it's really, I think that is one of the key differences between people who do this kind of stuff like me and people who don't. It's because they just refuse to accept that those are real. That's real data. Instead they look at me, and I know there's plenty of my neighbors and plenty of people I know and plenty of people in my family who think I'm very irresponsible financially. And certainly the boat is not, a responsible financial decision. That was more of an emotional decision and something was a dream of mine. So yeah, I mean, boats are always going to lose money. And most cars are always going to lose money. Airplanes depends on a lot of things, but the path that I chose, because I think outside the box, because I think, well, of course I can figure out a way to make this work. I do. And that's a big difference, because other people refuse to even think outside the box there and think that it's even possible.
Recently I was driving in Argentina and Buenos Aires, and I was cruising down one of the avenues, and up next to me, pulls up next to me a Ferrari, and it wasn't a 2022 F8 Spider. It was maybe like a 5 or 6 year old Ferrari. It was a nice car. I can't remember exactly what the model was. And next minute, there were like 3 or 4 crazy Argentinian drivers all weaving in and out trying to follow this thing. Oh, yeah. And at that point, I was like, getting a Ferrari down here in Buenos Aires might not be the best thing for me. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to being able to drive more in these amazing vehicles. And again, just a reminder that you're going to be able to see Steve and I going on a road trip where we're going to be in one of these things pretty soon. In fact, you can go to the 12-day giveaway ferrari.com and make sure you're following along with what we're doing there, because you're going to be able to see how we are cruising along in this thing, and we're going to be taking off on that road trip pretty shortly here. One last question on the whole car thing. Something that has always interested me. You've owned a Lamborghini. How do you compare the Ferrari versus the Lamborghini? What's your take for the uninitiated?
I'm not, I think I always described it as Lamborghinis. You sort of, you drive with your shoulders. They're bigger, they're heavier, they're all-wheel drive, and Ferraris are a little bit much more of a finesse thing. You drive with your wrists. They're all rear-wheel drive, well, 99% of them anyway. And they have a little bit more, playful. They're lighter. They feel lighter. They feel a little bit more nimble. And I think Ferraris are a little bit, look, they're all supercars. They all command attention, but they are a little bit more understated than a Lamborghini, Now Lamborghini's changed a little bit. I haven't driven the new ones. I only had one, and that was a Gallardo Spider years ago. And, maybe it's changed, but for me, I've always been sort of a Ferrari guy. And the other thing though, that's important is it benefits you to sort of hitch your wagon to a particular brand, because you can build a relationship with the dealer, and then you can get, like I got on, I'll get on a waiting list for a car that hasn't been announced yet. Not because there's plenty of people who are buying more cars than me and, that sort of thing. In fact, I was at the Formula One race recently. And I was with, I was sitting with a guy who clearly was incredibly wealthy. And we were both big Ferrari fans, and we were, in the Ferrari area and all this kind of stuff. And so I was talking to him, and I'm like, well, which one are you driving now? I've got an F8 Spider. And he paused, and he took him like a really long time to try to answer the question. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, was he like bullshitting me, or like, is this not real or something? So finally he comes around and he goes, well, I have all of them. I'm like, what do you mean you have all of them? And he goes, well, like, name one. And I go, okay, L812 Superyachts. He goes, yeah, I have one of those. I go, okay, so you have all of the Ferraris. He goes, yeah, I have all of the Ferraris. I'm like, why would you have all? Like, so that guy, but what he's trying to do is
I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to make like 20% return on investment on every single car, every single year, and he's making like $1 gazillion because he owns a gazillion Ferraris. I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing.
Well, he's not, because he's keeping them. No, he's keeping them because he's not flipping them. He's not selling them. Which, yes, he could have made a lot of money already, right? But so his car collection is going up in value, but he doesn't recognize the gain, But what he's trying to do is he wants to get the very exclusive cars. So he wants to get the LaFerrari successor. These are multi-million-dollar cars, which even I think are ridiculous. Now, having said that, they all of them will immediately make him a couple million more, because they only make 100 of them, whatever it is, right? So the car that you buy for 1.5 million is immediately worth 5 million. Or at least 6 months it is, or whatever. It's crazy. But you don't get to buy those cars unless you're invited by Ferrari. And so the only way to get invited by Ferrari is to buy every single car they offer you. So he's like, when they come out with a car, I buy the car. It's like, that's why I have all the cars. So I was like, okay. So
I love that, and I wonder if that kind of strategy could be applied to online businesses. Like, you buy the whole product line, and you're going to get invited to something pretty special. Anyway, that's amazing. And just coming back to something fun that we've got coming up. If you want to find out if Ferraris really are made for Italian roads and small, teeny, tiny Italian villages, then you need to tune in to the 12-day giveaway and other bits and pieces that I've got coming up in the new year.
You will find out.
And you'll find out if Ferraris are really made for Italian roads and small Italian villages. Now, last thing I really want to sort of hammer home here is what we've been talking about, things that lifestyle design and lifestyle freedom enables you to have. These things might sound excessive, but really, where there's a will, there's a way, and you don't have to be earning megabucks to be able to do these things. We've spoken about this in the past. In fact, way back in episode number 12 and 13 that I did with Steve on the Growth Booth back in March, and you can find those by going to thegrowthbooth.com, navigate to podcast episodes 12 and 13, March 2022. You'll see that we dived deeper into Steve's recipe for lifestyle freedom and happiness, and much of the same formulas that we discussed there in those episodes can be used for achieving the types of things or having the types of things and being able to live that kind of a lifestyle that you want to live, and ticking things off the bucket list. Like you just mentioned, going to F1, Formula One event. I think you were in Abu Dhabi, was it?
Yeah.
And, that's like a bucket list thing. That's a memory that you're going to have. And that's the kind of thing that I think anyone can do if you start to imagine it and start to sort of plot a path towards it. It doesn't have to be something that is reserved for only the mega wealthy. So again, we're going to be diving into lifestyle design, lifestyle freedom, so much more in the 12-day giveaway. That's kind of the theme for what we're doing there this year. So if you're listening to this episode right now, then you're sort of in the right place at the right time to head over to the 12daygiveaway.com and find out what we're doing. So look, Steve, thanks for tuning in here with us today and sharing some of your amazing adventures, near-death experiences, fast cars, big boats, private planes, and so much more.
Been fun.
I've said it before, being Steve Clayton's business partner has got its perks, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And one day I'm going to find a few perks that I can throw your way as well. So, guys, that's a wrap. You can see this episode. It's episode number 50. Head over to thegrowthbooth.com, navigate to number 50, and I will see you in the next episode of The Growth Booth, which will be the final episode for 2022. So make sure you tune in, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.